Well, the governor of Texas just legalized recreational marijuana. At least that's the headline that the lieutenant governor wants you to believe, and we're going to dive into all of that. But as we know, the terrible THC ban bill pushed forward by Senator Charles Perry and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick was vetoed by the Texas governor, Greg Abbott. It was apparently a last-minute whim decision that Dan Patrick can refuse to believe. And he is currently live at a press conference as the making of this video with his same exact talking points. We're going to cover all of that. But first, I want to dive into a more important topic. We earned every single bit of this veto, and the people of Texas made their voices heard until the very end. In fact, 30 minutes before the deadline. We were loud. We were loud when we needed to show up to the Capitol. We were loud when we needed to sign petitions. We were loud when we needed to write handwritten letters and make calls and send emails and do the things that are very uncomfortable to hold these people accountable. And our voices being loud and being unignorable, if that's a word, are what got us this veto. And we earned every single bit of it. And I am extremely proud and honored to not only be a leader in this fight, but to lead such an amazing community that's willing to stand up and go for it no matter what it takes, because we believe in it and there's a ton of people behind us that we are helping every single day, contrary to what these elected officials want everyone to believe. And that is the reason why they're having such a hard time convincing people like the governor and other folks that are educated on this topic that the ban was the best thing to do. And so we're seeing that happening now. So I hope everyone is out there celebrating the veto and the THC ban being stalled for the moment. Now, there's more on that. This fight is not over, so we are not done yet. There's a lot more to come, and we're going to talk about that. But I wanted to dive immediately into the Greg Abbott proclamation that he posted. When we talk about what just happened here, the lieutenant governor is trying to make people believe that the governor of Texas wants to legalize marijuana or recreational cannabis. And what we're seeing is one of the most incredible political duels that most of us will probably ever see in our lifetime. What we have here is a conservative like Greg Abbott who still can remain moderate and true to the law and true to what is right and constitutional and true to freedoms, while also remaining a little bit moderate on certain social issues. Dan Patrick, on the other hand, is an outdated, completely aged out conservative that has a very behind the times way of thinking, to put it nicely. But he does have a grip on the legislature, which is how we got to where we are here with needing the governor to veto this terrible ban bill. And so I really believe that the age of this old school Christian conservative for Texas, creating this high and mighty lifestyle that they want to believe every Texan is living, is dead. I believe that whole entire way of believing and that whole holding on to that whole entire ideology is absolutely behind the times. And Greg Abbott was actually able to finally defend the people of Texas who depend on these products, and he became a hero. And it will be his legacy that he did this. Let's talk about the proclamation. Everybody from the beginning said we needed regulation. There was not a single hemp operator that showed up and showed their face and put their name and face behind what they're doing that didn't explain that we need regulation. So let's be very clear. And so what we see here in this proclamation kind of sums up every single testimony and complaint and gripe that we all had about what was going on. And it really sums it up that they were listening. So those letters matter, our voices matter, and the staff that works for the governor and the people who advise him, thank you for bringing up these beautiful points here. Forgive me if I'm a little distracted. I still have the little angry man going still on my phone here. So he's still in there, still going live, still angry, literally covering the same talking points. He basically put out a proclamation and that said that Texans on each side of Senate Bill 3 raised serious concerns. But one thing is clear: to ensure the highest level of safety for minors as well as for adults who obtain product more dangerous than what they expected, Texas must strongly regulate hemp, and it must do so immediately. Amazing. No qualms. Not disagreeing with that. I think that's 100% common sense. SB3 was well-intentioned, but would never go into effect because of valid constitutional challenges. That is exactly what we were trying to say all along. This would be almost a nightmare to enforce. It's almost near impossible to get all of these bad actors in order, isn't it? Because if it was so easy, wouldn't the government already be doing it? So we need a true platform and a true guidebook on what we are supposed to be doing so that it can be enforced by those people. Anybody in the industry that has had DSHS come to their store has had nothing but positive things to say. And so the enforcement is not something that we're trying to avoid. We want clear regulations so that the bad actors and the good actors can be differentiated, and a level playing field is what we are operating in. That's all we want. Litigation challenging the bill was already filed. It's true. We know these large businesses out there that band together already and put their name as plaintiffs on these large lawsuits. And that obviously is weighing in on what on the decision of the governor to veto this bill. He also cites the case from Arkansas of what was happening in Arkansas in 2023. And that is still ongoing from what I understand. They have yet to make a decision on that. But basically it was saying that the Arkansas law was challenged and a federal court swiftly halted it in its entirety, finding that it was likely preempted by federal statutes and that its criminal provisions were likely unconstitutionally vague, meaning unenforceable is basically what's happening. And so these bills are just terribly written, and they're backed by a lot of other things that are not, they don't want you to know. And that's how we get bad legislation all the way to the governor's desk. Now, the governor is a former Supreme Court justice and Attorney General of Texas. This guy has an unbelievable amount of judicial experience. And that, I think, is really what came in and saved us here on SB3. He knew bad policy. He knew bad policy when he saw it. This guy is experienced, and you can't pull the wool over his eyes. The legal problem with SB3 as passed is that it would prohibit anyone from manufacturing, distributing, and possessing consumable hemp products, all the way down to even hemp seeds, meaning that all of your local grocery stores and supplement stores and the likes would be committing a criminal violation. That seems a little bit ridiculous. SB3 not only invites potential criminal entrapment for Texas farmers, but would also make felons of other innocent Texans, like pharmacies stocking health supplements, veterans treating PTSD, and parents caring for epileptic children with FDA-approved medications. Amazing. So literally who he just listed in the proclamation is all of the thousands of Texans and beyond that gave their testimony, whether it be in person or written. And so now you see that our voices were heard all the way up to the governor's desk and made it into this proclamation. So you should be very proud. I know exactly who he's talking about when he lists those specific lines, and you probably do too. Congrats to those people, and we love you for being here and being a part of this fight. He goes on in his proclamation to talk about why he was making this decision. And again, I'm going to not only put this up here for you to look at yourself, but I'm going to link it for you to read on. But because I don't want to keep you here for forever on some long video, I'm going to skip to what I believe is the meat and potatoes of this entire proclamation and one of the most important pieces that I wanted to talk about. And so he's vetoing SB3 and calling for a special session in July to craft a law that does as much possible to corral the problems while also being structured so that it can go into effect this year. Texans must enact a regulatory framework that protects public safety, aligns with federal law, and has a fully funded enforcement structure and can take effect without delay. Legislatures could consider a structure similar to the way that alcohol is regulated, with strict enforcement by an agency like the TABC. That's the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission. Like the TABC. He didn't explicitly say it would be the TABC, which I really appreciate that. I think words matter. The Beverage Commission could essentially adopt a framework, and a sample of potential regulations could include some of the following. And this is really what I want to talk about. I'm going to go line by line here. Selling or providing a THC product to a minor must be punishable by a crime. Totally agree. No problem. Sales must be prohibited near schools, churches, parks, playgrounds, and other areas frequented by children. Cool. No problem. Again, I always say I will happily move my retail store for $20,000, $30,000, take that small hit, then lose my entire business. No problem. Packaging must be child resistant, tamper evident, and resealable. Folks, if you're not already doing that, what are you doing? That should be an absolute standard for this industry. It should be a moral standard for most of us operating in this industry. And it's very, very easy to find affordable and effective child-proof packaging. So I have no qualms there. Packaging or products must not be made, packaged, or marketed in a manner attractive to children. Cool, no problem. I don't need Mike Tyson's face. I don't need a cartoon to sell my product. It's actually good enough as it is that people like it. They consume it and they enjoy it. And they come back for more. It shouldn't matter that I use a cartoon. In fact, the folks who want to trick you into using a celebrity or a cartoon are oftentimes not selling you the highest quality product because they need all that extra marketing to get it in your hands. Be aware of that. Any store selling these products must have a permit and restrict access to anyone under the age of 21 with strict penalties for any retailer who fails to comply. Cool. Amazing. Sit someone at the door and have them check IDs or hire a private security guard for a daily shift. Wow. Well, look, that created jobs just like that. Isn't that great? So now all we have to do is restrict access to our stores to people who can actually legally afford our products and buy from us and are consenting full-fledged adults. I love it. That's beautiful. Not hurting me at all. Products containing THC may not contain any other psychoactive substances. Example, alcohol, tobacco, kratom. I'm sure they also will list psychedelics in there. I think that should be added in there. I'm glad they added that because you don't know what you're getting in some of these cannabinoid cocktail gummies. It's very dangerous. You should not just be taking any alphabet soup off the shelf and tossing it back like it's nothing. That's not responsible. Let's be real. Testing must be required at every phase of production and manufacturing, including for both plants and derivative consumable products. That is an absolute no-brainer. We already all do that, or we should, because it's already in the regulation that already exists. Manufacturing or processing facilities must be subject to permitting and food safety rules. If you go back to one of my previous episodes with Rado from Texarkana Organics, he tells you that when he became an edible operator and started a commercial kitchen to produce high-quality THC and CBD edibles, he had to get a food permit as well as the hemp permit and license, which came with fingerprints and food inspections and all kinds of other regulations just because your food, nonetheless, THC or cannabinoid. So again, that's a no-brainer. No problem there. Permit and registration fees must suffice to support robust enforcement and testing by the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission in partnership with other state agencies. So Texas Alcohol and Beverage Commission doesn't do that great of a job of even regulating alcohol. In fact, we have a ton of alcohol-related deaths. We have a ton of over-serving out there in bars and restaurants. We have a ton of irresponsible sales of alcohol to minors. Even though the TABC is in existence, I would not say that it is perfect, nor would I say it's equipped to not only start regulating alcohol at an inferior rate, but start taking on hemp cannabinoid and beyond and put that on their plate because they're just not equipped to do that. Alcohol and cannabinoid are completely different. It's a completely different industry, completely different substance, completely different culture. I mean, everything is completely different. So I don't look for that to be very beneficial. However, this other partnership with other state agencies, that's very important. In the original committee substitute, there was a room for advisory board where they were going to create an advisory board of the state where certain people from different professions and levels of expertise were going to be voted in or selected by representatives into this advisory board. Now, I may or may not know someone who could potentially serve on such a board. And I would be ecstatic to do that and recommend people for those boards. And that is something that leaves me a little glimmer of hope within the whole TBC alcohol regulates us world. An operator's permit and warning/danger signs must be posted at any store selling these products. Cool. Okay, so we just put something on the front that says THC. Nice. No problem. We already do that. Sales must be limited to the hours of 10 to 9 and prohibited on Sundays. So copy and pasting that from alcohol legislation or regulation. Great. Pretty lazy in my opinion. What is the science or basis on that being the rule for alcohol? Because I still drink in bars until 2 a.m. So I don't think that makes any sense on alcohol, nonetheless, hemp and cannabis. So perfectly legal, federally legal product. I don't know why you can't operate, 24 hours if you wanted to. The amount of THC permissible in each product must be restricted, and an individual may make only a limited number of purchases in a given period of time. Great. How do you track that? That's my question. Labels must include a Surgeon General style warning, a clear disclosure of all ingredients, including the THC content, and a scannable barcode or QR code linking the test results. Raise your hand out there if you already do that for all of your products. Very easy. These are very easy. We could literally no change would basically do 90% of this. It's absolutely insane. This is the biggest waste of a legislature's time I've ever seen. But I'm glad that the governor is making these definitive statements. Maybe people will start listening and Republicans will feel a little more confident stepping out of line with the lieutenant governor and resisting a little bit, because we would love some fair representation. And I know a ton of conservatives that are just dying to vote you out and vote blue if you don't hold the line of what your constituents want. So just keep that in mind when you go into this special session in July. Fraudulently creating or displaying manifests and lab results must be punishable by a felony offense, basically saying if you fake your compliance, you're a criminal. No problem sleeping at night there. Love that. Public consumption on the premises of any store that sells the products, or possession of an open container in a vehicle must be punishable as crimes. Cool. Guys, unfortunately, we just have to be adults. That's what it comes down to. You just have to be respectful adults. Do I believe that cannabis should be free? Cannabis should be viewed as socially acceptable as a cigarette or a beer or any of the likes? Yes, I totally do. Do I believe that will be socially acceptable tomorrow now that we have this veto, or that things are progressing for cannabis nationwide? I don't think so. I think there's going to be a ton of time there. Also, my favorite saying is, keep your high harmless and keep it at home or in private. Don't take it on the road. Don't take it to your child's school event. Don't take it to somewhere that's going to be inappropriate. I think we're all adults and we can all manage to not publicly consume fragrantly, to not consume on the premise of where the store is that you bought it. Just like alcohol, there's no difference there. And the possession of the open container in the vehicle. So if you're openly smoking a joint and you have a roach in an open doob tube in your cup holder, you need to be more responsible than that. I think we can all just suck it up and agree that that is the case. I'm not saying we'll all do it, but it is the case. The Attorney General, district attorneys, and county attorneys must have authority to pursue violations. No problem. We just don't want deceptive trade practices to be violated. Local governments must have the option to prohibit or limit stores from selling these products. Totally cool. That literally happens in virtually every other market. Small towns, cities, municipalities, counties, they can be dry. They can say, hey, we don't want cannabis. We don't want hemp. We don't want marijuana in our county. You can vote on it, or your commissioners or leadership can vote on it, and that's the law of the land. You have more than the right to do that. No problem. Excise tax must be assessed on these products to fund oversight and enforcement. Again, they doubled down here, basically saying we need to pay in more money to be enforced on. That's what they're saying. I don't disagree with that, but it's still insulting that we've been paying already, and the bad actors still are out there, and we're still going through these attacks from higher up elected officials. Yet we're paying tax. We're paying the taxes we're supposed to by being a legal business in the state of Texas, and so we paid our licensing fees. We pay our testing bill for independent third-party testing. We keep up with all of those costs ourselves. Now they're saying we need to assess more taxes and maybe even have that fall on the consumer for these products. They just want more money. I knew that was coming. I'm not going to say it's cool, but I knew it was coming. And, tax on cannabinoid, I don't agree with it entirely because there's no extra tax on alcohol. In fact, I can go to Specs and pay cash and get tax-free. Well, that's interesting. But sure, let's concede a little bit for keeping our entire business. And additional funding must be provided to ensure that law enforcement have sufficient resources to vigorously enforce restrictions. I love this. They snuck in a little bit more funding at the end and trying to say that we need to allocate for more people to come and raid our warehouses and shops, tamper with evidence, test it wrong, convert cannabinoids, and basically bring entrapment and duress upon us to operate our business. That's what that last one is. So the list is not exhaustive, he says, but it may provide items to consider for a regulatory system that is strict but fair and legally sustainable. Hallelujah. Greg Abbott, you are a champion. And no, I don't believe that you really want to legalize recreational cannabis in Texas, contrary to what Danny Crabcakes wants people to believe. I believe that you solely believe in freedom, personal liberty, and you saw the fallacy that is this bill of banning something that was made legal by the very people who proposed that it be banned in 2019. I think Greg Abbott has no allegiance to cannabis, and I believe that Greg Abbott basically put on his judicial hat and made the right decision based on the facts presented to him, which is what the whole entire legislature should have done, but they failed us. Never forget that. So Dan Patrick had a press conference where he touted that this was the most conservative session and business-friendly session. He came back with his same exact talking points that we've seen time and time again. But this time, he didn't have his police officers and his muscle and all of his supporters. This time he was absolutely solo, alone, like a sad, wet puppy, trying to explain why his owner smacked him for chewing up a toy that nobody asked him to destroy. And it was very embarrassing that he, again, tried to run the same rhetoric, an army of one. He tried to run the same talking points, and it was just sad. It's a sad look for conservatives. It's a sad look for folks that maybe do agree with 80 to 90% of what the Republicans and the Conservative Party believes in. But we have these little pet projects that end up making a name for the entire group. And I don't believe that that's accurate, just like it happens on the left side as well. So I believe that it's a bad look for Texas in general. I believe Texas lost by having their lieutenant governor stand in front of the media angry, demanding that something be done and that he wanted to restrict your freedom, telling you what to do in your daily life. I think that's a bad look. And I think that the governor understood that, and that's another reason why he made the decision that he made. Too many people are against the pet project of banning THC from Dan Patrick, and it shows. Our voices were heard like no other. But yet he gets in his press conference and he goes directly at the governor. In fact, making claims as though the governor wants to legalize recreational cannabis in Texas. That's his intention. That's why he did this. That's what he's saying. These are huge allegations. And the same guy who says, "Oh, me and the governor talk every day. We have a great relationship. Me, the governor, the speaker, the House, we all talk every single day. We have a great relationship. And we've talked many times about SB3. That's the facade that he had the entire time until the 11th hour when we got a veto. And now all of a sudden in his press conference, we see him backtracking that, saying, oh no, the governor was silent. The governor was silent on everything. He didn't have anything to say. He didn't have any interaction with the legislature. He was MIA.
And look, we'll work with the governor, but where has he been all session? Where's he been? I mean, we get this proclamation from him last night after midnight. He parachutes in at the last moment.
So, excuse me for being confused. Did you talk to him every day or not? Was he silent or did you talk to him every day? Which one is it, right? Is hemp good and legal for farmers or is it banned? You seem to flip-flop. You seem to be spineless, which seems to be coming out rapidly that you are paid for by alcohol, medical cannabis, and these medical marijuana programs that are the largest grift I've ever seen, and many other anti-hemp and cannabis entities. Maybe the prisons, God, who only knows? The money trail will come out shortly now that session is over. All this stuff will be public information. And he challenges the governor now, challenges the governor to make a statement and come out and say, you know, I was MIA all session. You know, I didn't have anything to do with this. He wants to challenge him to come out and make a statement and put him in the position to double down and say, I wanted cannabis.
Yes. So why doesn't he just come out? I hope he'll make a statement today and say, yes, the lieutenant governor is right. I am for legalizing marijuana for adults in the state of Texas.
And make no mistake about it. This legislative session was terrible. It was a tirade, authoritarian rampage from Dan Patrick. And I think now people are starting to wake up to that beyond hemp. And that makes me extremely proud. Our voices were loud enough that I think it drew attention to even deeper issues about what they were doing to our children's schools and what they were doing behind the scenes on a ton of other issues that affect our daily life that we didn't ask for, we definitely didn't vote for, and we definitely did not elect people to put in jeopardy. But the facade is all falling down now. And I think that this final little press conference that he did was the nail in the coffin for this entire rampage and campaign that he has on banning legal hemp and THC products. I'm embarrassed a little bit that it got this far, but I'm extremely thankful to someone like Greg Abbott who knows when enough is enough and knows when bad policy is landing on his desk and doesn't blindly answer to donors or influences that are working behind the scenes. The fight's not over. What's the way forward? We now inevitably are going into a special session. We can obviously make noise with the offices and still make sure that our representatives know we want THC from hemp, we want regulation, and we want similar things listed by the governor here. But this is going to be a closed session where the full sides of the House and the Senate are going to work on things and work on a bill that's going to regulate THC from hemp. So without a doubt, expect change in this industry, right? This is not veto day, ding dong, the witch is dead, we're scot-free. We still have a 30-day window here that is going to be another David and Goliath story. They are going to go into special session and try to work on a law that is strict but fair. There is going to be an unbelievable amount of pressure from the alcohol industry and the medical cannabis side of TCUP, which Dan Patrick also admitted in his press conference just minutes ago that if hemp remains around, TCUP is useless. TCUP is useless. He said it. That's the truth. That's why it never expanded. That's why it doesn't do well. It's all because of hemp. The
TCUP program. He signed that bill. That's worthless now. Here we passed maybe the best TCUP program, Texas for Compassionate Use, to address those with PTSD, cancer, Crohn's disease, we added. Who's going to go there now when they can go to any smoke shop and get what they want? That's why no one grew their licenses before.
Hemp is the reason why TCUP fails. That's not true. TCUP is a corrupt pill mill grift that pushes medical marijuana with a made-up derogatory term to people without doctor supervision, like they claim, without any sort of guidance on how to dose yourself properly. They go to a pill mill doctor or a kiosk in a strip club or nightclub or cannabis event, and they get this obligatory card. They give their information to God knows what database, and they can go, maybe, if they're lucky, try to find these products on a local shelf and pay a premium. Does that sound like a program that anybody here would want to join? It sure doesn't sound like a program I would want to join. I have more Instagram and social media followers than that entire program has patients in a state of 30 million people. Meanwhile, we help tens of thousands on the daily with the same thing that TCUP claims they do. But yet we're available, third-party tested, safe, affordable, federally legal, not federally illegal. I digress. But where we're going is a special session where these folks who have been against us from the start are only going to ramp up their efforts to make sure that we are no longer in existence here so that they can magically scoop up all of our consumers and customers in demand. It's not going to work like that. That entire industry is doomed from the start. And I'll tell you the truth. They've already sent cease and desist letters to individuals. They've already threatened people. They're saying we will be litigious if you keep saying that our program is bad or that we aren't this company or we don't do what we say we're going to do. They're already legally attacking individuals while trying to put them out of business. So do you really think that these people are here for your betterment, your health? They're not here, or you think they're here for Texas? I'm going to let you make that decision. But I definitely want the evidence to be there. I want there to be no secrets, no hiding behind curtains and attorneys and cease and desist letters and lobbying. I want it all to be out there. That's what this platform is for. And for the people who are anti-hemp and that are out there spewing this misguided message that us hemp operators our days are numbered and we are only on a loophole and we're operating illegally and blah, 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 blah. We've been here for 6 years. To me, the only loophole that I see is people who have grown a business in a state-ran program that circumvents federal law, who can't bank and can't process their money and can't report their expenses and write off on taxes and on all the other things that come with being in the fucked up other options for cannabis in the nation. So again, eat your words. That's all I have to say for you folks out there that have been here for the demise of hemp. The fight is alive. It's alive and well. And hemp is going to change not only the world, but the entire cannabis market. And I guarantee you, Texas is going to be on the absolute forefront of that. If I have anything to do with it, we will become America's cultivator. We will step up and supply the unbelievable demand for cannabinoid, fiber, concrete, textiles, and beyond. We can become the next breadbasket of America, but instead of bread, it's hemp. Something that will change the world. And the fight is not over. There's many people are going to be after us for the foreseeable future. If we're going to take out people in paper, lumber, cotton, they're going to come after us too. But hemp can change the world for the better. And the fight is alive and well. The community in Texas is alive and well. It's better and bigger and more motivated than it ever has been with all of these common enemies. And the consumers are more educated and eager and invested in having these freedoms and letting their neighbors have these freedoms than ever before. So thank you to the Lieutenant Governor for being the number one advocate and number one public face of Texas THC for the last 6 months or more. The sales have gone through the roof. The education has gone through the roof. The amount of people reaching out directly to brands like my own and some of our ad partners and some of our connections here in the industry has been immense. We are winning the market share we deserve from these bad actors because of the attention that was brought to their existence in this last session. So there's a silver lining in all of this, but prepare yourselves for deep regulation of these products. If the special session is unsuccessful, the veto will stand and the industry and the market will remain unchanged. So they will continue to operate as is for the foreseeable future until they try again. But odds are they come to an agreement on something that is strict and fair, and we have to roll with those punches of some sort of regulation. If there's no change, you should also expect that there will be enhanced enforcement throughout the industry, from the DSHS to the TDA and beyond. It was written in his proclamation here earlier that we talked about. So expect more attention. That only means that you have to be more accountable, more on your shit than ever before, which we need to be. We need to set the example for not only the state, but for the world on how this whole entire hemp cannabis conversation can happen in a real advanced society like Texas. We are the world's leader in multiple other things. Hemp and cannabis needs to be no different. Take the time, regroup, and celebrate. We got a veto. Our hard work is paying off. And it wouldn't have been possible without people like you out there. Whether you're just subscribing to my channel, whether you're just supporting us by writing your elected officials and representatives, whether you're showing up to the Capitol, whether you're operating a business, whether you're donating money to our causes, every single person that stepped up in any capacity, you are responsible for the veto that we saw here. And you're responsible for Texans and their cannabis and hemp freedoms being protected. This was the most pro-cannabis session in Texas history. We have a medical marijuana expansion bill, and we vetoed the ban of legal hemp and THC in Texas. So essentially, this has been one of the most cannabis-friendly sessions in all of Texas history, which is incredible because we went from a total 180, from a ban, this is bad, this is doomed, to now we have more medical, even though it's a scam, and we have more hemp freedoms on the way. So I am optimistic about how this industry will prevail and how we will continue to evolve over time, but only time will tell. So stay locked in, stay vigilant on this special session. Make sure that these folks know that our voices are still here, they're still heard, and that we are adamant about keeping hemp and THC legal and available in Texas. If you like what you see here on the channel and you love getting more insight to the Texas market and beyond, please subscribe here to my channel and the Texas Growers Podcast. We have a ton of insightful people coming on the show, especially now that there's a veto and our industry will prevail. We have a ton of people lined up. We're going to continue to ramp up our content and our production and our media output for you so that you can stay informed and enjoy more content just like this. Shout out to Soundshed Studios out there in Austin, Texas. We love you guys. Thanks for putting us up here in this amazing spot. And with that, we will see you guys on the next one.